Hey, I just want to start this episode with a lot of seriousness.
All right. Continue, please.
I was talking to my oldest son who said, "What are you working on?" As I was prepping this morning, and I said, "Some podcast episodes."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Oh, I listened to."
No, this is serious. This is serious. This is serious.
Sorry.
Continue.
He said, "I listened to it."
Come on. Be serious for once.
He said, I can't do it, man. He goes, I listened to like 45 seconds of one of your episodes, and I thought it like you guys were like doing a comedy podcast.
That's not good.
And
I mean, in some ways, it's like, is that good? We're funny, and the other ways, like, no, that means we're laughing at you, funny.
Yeah. Oh man, I tried to do that so seriously. Yeah, he was like, I listened to like 45 seconds. I thought you were doing comedy, so I stopped listening. Yeah. Anyway,
maybe we should do comedy. Maybe we should just throw this all aside.
I don't know. I think we have a max of about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it's probably not as funny.
But that's probably funny.
Yeah, we can do 2-minute episodes.
Hey, I feel like we should like start a new series or something.
We should start a new series. We should tell people this is the second time we recorded the first episode of this new series.
Hopefully this will be better.
Kicking off.
Yeah.
So this is where we've been. We talked for the past several weeks, if you listen in order. We've done a lot of intro around the hub teams in Kansas City. And we still have a few stories to tell. And the cool thing is we're about to finish training 2 new hub teams.
Yeah.
And we've got, probably like potentially 4 to 5 new hub teams in our city that will be training by the end of this year. So I wish we had one of those like little buttons where you could like put the applause.
You can.
We're excited about that.
If you put a little bit more effort into editing this, you can totally do that.
I probably won't.
I wouldn't even know where to begin.
So. What was the other thing though? Why don't you talk about the other series that they've been mixed?
It's been together. This were 3 strands of a cord, 3 cords of a strand. What is it? 3?
2 strands are bad.
Wait, I don't know. Anyway, we're doing the interviewing all of our hub leaders, but we're also looking at the paradigm shifts. So in our disciple making pathway primer, we years ago wrote about these 9 paradigm shifts that we see in movements when you're fully in this movement paradigm world, and how that's different than maybe some of our the Western church kind of like way that most of us have grown up in if you grew up in the church. There's some major shifts that we see in the book of Acts and that we see in movements globally where sometimes our mind just has to click into that.
Yeah.
So we did 9 of those, and they were episodes. Were they good? Who knows? But where we're at now is that's done, and we got to figure something else out. So we whiteboarded a bunch of ideas, recorded the intro to one of them, realized my mic was yet not plugged in, probably
wasn't turned on.
So let's dive into this again. Brian, I feel like you sit in this world a lot, this language, some of what we're gonna dive into. So maybe you give a little of the intro to the intro.
I'll do it, man. Over the last year, the Kansas City Underground's gone through some pretty deep shifts. We had 5 years of just like, let's go, let's do this thing, and we got to 9, 10, maybe even 11 different hub teams at one point. And we reached the point where it was like, okay, I think we've talked about this some, but just to say it again, we need to create a new organizing identity, a new structure to support the hub teams as they support ordinary leaders. We got these different extended families around the city. How do we become one bigger family that really shares this DNA together? How's everybody expressing it in their context? What's shared? What's unique to an individual hub team? And then we need to create this, what we were calling a new table, that's made up of these different hub directors. And so we've added that hub support team as fully functioning, considering the health of hub directors as they consider the health of ordinary leaders. And so over the course of last year, we did a lot of conversations around what's the DNA of the Kansas City Underground? What do we all say together? What are common practices that we share? what's at the root of who we are. It was a lot of work. There were moments that were a lot of fun. There were moments that were like, "Ooh, this is hard work," to really get into the depths of who you are and consider how it's affecting how you live it out, how you embody it. So one of the ideas that we had was, why don't we walk through the 6, what we would call foundational elements of movement. So our buddy Alan Hirsch came up with these 6 foundational elements that he calls mDNA, movement DNA. We don't talk about this much, but they are at the core of who we are. We embody them. We contextualize them. We don't just use the language specifically like Alan had labeled it out. But here's the thing. One of the things that you emphasized in our pre-recording of this recording is this isn't just a theology lesson. It's not, in some moments it might feel a little heady, but it's really about what's at the core of what's forming real people and microchurches across Kansas City. And then for those that are disciple makers in the network listening to this, like to go, oh, wow, I resonate with that. That is who we are. And I'm actually embodying that in these specific ways. Yeah. The DNA is shared, but the contextualization is something different. So what are you hearing in that? What would you add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, great.
Yeah. We don't want to just stay in the headspace. We want to talk about things in ways that maybe sometimes we haven't used those exact words on this podcast, but a lot of the framework, a lot of the background of who we are. I also think of, in terms of, movements of the gospel and in the organizations in which support those. They're not always like the same, but the DNA can be consistent. So for us, we are an organization. We're also a network that doesn't belong to the organization, if that makes sense. It's really hard to explain. So we try to be underneath instead of the umbrella over, and underneath is always supporting leaders, equipping people. So we're just thinking, as what Brian was, I think, describing is like we're just forming more and more layers of that so that more and more of the city can be reached. So we're raising up more and more leaders who can raise up more and more disciple makers who are reaching into the harvest, planting the gospel, making disciples. But behind all of that, as we peel back, what are some of the things that I think are key to what we've learned, who we live into, both organizationally and network-wide? So I hope this is helpful for leaders and just for people doing this thing who are also leading in their own context.
Yeah. I want to get a little bit into some of the language behind this around these 3 words that we call paradigm, platform, and practices.
Paradigm,
that's the heady
platform,
stuff.
Practices.
Yeah, and I'm not actually going to go deep into that like we did in the pre-recording of the recording.
I'm glad you keep referencing the thing that no one else has heard. It's good. It's really solid.
Here's the key.
It's part of the comedy act.
Let me say it this way. The way that our friend Alan would describe this is paradigm is the seed. It's at the base root. And when you plant a seed, a tree can grow. And that would be the platform or the frameworks that you begin to think about. How does this paradigm actually get played out in real life? And then there's these practices, the fruit that would come out of that. And so the reason I wanted to bring that up is, in light of the 9 paradigm shifts that we made, you have to start really thinking about the DNA at this point. Like if you heard those 9 paradigm shifts, like if you've been tracking with us and you're like, yeah, I want to move from, church as event to like church as extended spiritual family. I want to move from thinking of disciple making as
extracting instead of planting or knowledge based instead of obedience based, right? All these things, all these paradigm shifts we live into.
If that stuff gets you excited, and you're like, okay, like, how does it work out? It's like, well, you got to form some new DNA. Over the last few days specifically, I've had probably 6 or 7 different conversations with people from the UK to California, like in that range geographically, churches.
Heading west to east or east to west?
East to west, actually.
Okay. So starting in the UK and going east? Oh, man, so you covered the globe.
West.
Okay, they go west.
I'm not good at this. Geography is hard. So in these, you got me distracted. So in these conversations, people are curious about how we do what we do. and they're asking questions, essentially, how do you do what you do? And often what they're like desiring are some practices.
Yeah.
And they're asking like, okay, like specifically one yesterday, is an amazing conversation around how do we integrate Discovery Bible Study?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do we get our groups to do Discovery Bible Study? And I was like, I'll train you on DBS. And I did it in like, 90 seconds. Cause I was like, it's so
was
easy.
this a Zoom call?
Yeah.
I was in the other room and I heard you say it. I'm like, there you go. That's all you need for your DBS training.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I was able to get into after with him was, what are you going to do if these DBS groups start taking off?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a social contract of someone inviting someone into a Discovery Bible Study that, like, at the end of it, if they're like, I want to take steps of obedience towards Jesus, and you're like, well, actually you need to come to the weekend service. Yeah. It's like you just broke that social contract and that relational connection.
That's exactly right.
And so I was thinking about this episode going like, you can't just take practices and just slap them on to an old paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about a new DNA that forms you, and then the frameworks that hold that DNA, and then the practices that emerge from that DNA.
That's
otherwise
exactly right.
These practices become like heavy weights that people are trying to hold. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this tool and this tool and this tool and this tool. And
at some point there's tension when our practices don't match with our paradigm or our platform. And totally, I think anyone who's been in like the disciple making movement world in America has felt that. We might learn from these incredible movements globally. Hey, everyone does Discovery Bible Study. Let's do Discovery Bible Study. Either it is fruitful in our places, and then what happens is what you described. Right. Now what? Or it just becomes the small group curriculum within the other paradigm, which is fine. But it's not going to reproduce disciples among the harvest because we're not even in the harvest. We're on a different platform. So there's just that. Yeah, it's just different. But I was thinking about it on the way.
That's so good, dude.
I was driving in today. Oh, I know. Thanks. I don't know what was good, but
can you remember that story?
Yes.
Okay. The what you just said of like, we're not making disciples in the harvest, because one of the mDNAs is missional incarnational, which is not it's not part of the DNA of the institutional form of Christianity. Yep. So DBS inside there isn't actually impacting lostness, but the DNA that first starts with, we were sent, we'll talk about this in a minute. Yeah. We've been sent out, requires a form of reproducing, helping people discover Jesus that is the practice of DBS.
Yeah.
Man.
No, it is, and this, my story will go into this. It is the reality of having to go all in on the paradigm that we're talking about. Having to go all in on the ecosystem of movement requires not just practices, it requires the base level when it comes to the paradigm, the seed, but also the framework in which all of the practices are built off is, that's the platform language.
Yeah.
Without those things, you can even see some fruit on this for a little bit, and you can even multiply that, but it doesn't stick anywhere. It doesn't sustain. And so I was literally thinking about this on my drive in. I was like, if you don't have emerging church, formation, micro church, spiritual families on the back end of all disciple making, then you won't see movement. And that is like the cherry on top, not the cherry on top. It is the reality of the paradigm platform practices where it's like, man, are we really going to go all in on this? It's really hard to then pivot to the other paradigm halfway through. It's just really hard. I can train people how to make disciples in their neighborhood, and they can do DBSs, and it's still good. It's still effective. But if we want to see movement in our city, then there is a level of how do we go all in? How do you jump 2 feet into this paradigm over here? And I can't tell you what that means for you, and I can't tell you what that journey is. But for us, we have learned enough that we gotta go all in on the platform and paradigm levels.
Yeah.
So this is good. I think you guys get what we're saying.
Yeah. And
so
let me just say this before we get into just doing the intro real fast today of the 6 elements of mDNA. You hit this last week. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more, but just a quick highlight. These 6 elements are lived and embodied by people, by ordinary people. It's not just about an organization. So if you're listening to this or watching it, whatever, we encourage you to consider, how do I embody each of these? And hopefully we can tell stories along the way of the Kansas City Underground. But just that question, what does this look like in my life, in my place, with my people? Movement is about people, not organizations.
Yeah. I just hear it from both levels today. Hear it from the ground level and the air sky level. Like big picture stuff, we're talking about this needs to permeate everything we do. But like smallest zoom onto on the ground level, what you're doing, it's the same. You're embodying this as you live as a disciple maker on mission in your context. So do you think that's enough intro?
I think
before
so.
we dive into the intro, and then each episode we'll do
get
more of
its
a
own episode. Yeah. So today we're just going to tell you what are the 6 mDNA, offer some clarity around each of them, offer a question to consider, and then over the next few weeks we're going to dive into each of these in more depth. So we'll just go back and forth. Here's the first one, and it's the essential one, and we're going to tell you how the Kansas City Underground embodies it. So I'm going to tell you Alan's first mDNA, this 3 words of Jesus is Lord. The mDNA is the lordship of Jesus. It has to form us as people and the organizations we belong to. We base that in Kansas City on Ephesians 1:22 through 23. I'd encourage you to go read that from Eugene Peterson's version. Have I told you that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the church is not peripheral to the world. The world is peripheral to the church, through which Jesus fills everything with his presence. Oh, such a good line.
That is good.
And so our language around this mDNA element, movemental DNA of Jesus is Lord, we use this phrase, we return to Jesus in everything, in every way. So Jesus is Lord, the language around that one is that it's a foundational confession of the early church. It's the catalytic engine of all movement. It's not just a doctrinal statement. It's a reordering of allegiance. If Jesus is truly king, I love this phrase, if Jesus is truly king, then everything else must bend the knee. Our schedules, our identities, our systems, and assumptions. And so I'm really excited about doing this episode because just getting into that phrase, I think this one is really misunderstood. I think people just assume it versus living it. So the question for you in this first one before Cory takes the second one is just this: how are you embodying Jesus is Lord? What does it look like for you to return to Jesus in everything, in every way? So mDNA number 1, Jesus is Lord.
Boom. We're gonna, if you hear this podcast a lot, or if you're in the underground realm at all, you'll hear us talk about certain scriptures all the time, right? Like we talk about the Great Commission all
Matthew
the freaking
28.
time. We talk about book of Acts, we love Acts 16, like the story of Philippi, and Lydia. We love Acts 19. You just hear us tell stories of, well, we also, if you're around us, you're gonna hear us talk about the book of Ephesians a lot. So all of these, you kind of roll through the book of Ephesians, you see some of these major elements. So Ephesians 2:10 is something that we say all the time, right? It's like that idea that we're all we all have our masterpiece mission, right? We're all made with like that in mind, right? And how do we live into that uniquely? So number 2 is the missional incarnational impulse.
That's a handful.
We make up words in the Christian world, man. And missional, being on mission, right? It's and that is a posture.
Yeah.
There's a reason why there's we had to make up that word.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say we like us, like underground, but like we as people, where we read the Bible and we're like, wait, we're supposed to be going out there on mission, missional, right? So, and then incarnational, right? Fancy word for basically looking at the incarnate Jesus, right? So God made himself flesh in Jesus. And so really taking on talking about Eugene Peterson, that definition of in John chapter 1, like he took on the flesh, like he moved into the neighborhood was what Peterson says. So it's like the very fact that God is present in bodily human form is incarnation. So if we are to be incarnational, that's our posture too. We're living into it. We're not separated. We're not just thinking about it or, just gathering in our holy huddles. We are taking on the mission of God in a missional way, in a incarnationally present. That's who we are. So what that means is that in our language, we have a particular place, all of us, or a particular people that we are called to plant the gospel, to see the flourishing of the good news of Jesus to take root, for disciples to be made multiplied. So that's just something you will hear all the freaking time in our world is, who are your people? Yeah. Who are your context?
Where have you been sent?
Where? Yeah. Who is it? Who? Where? What does it look like? Because if you don't know that, you don't do anything, and that's what we've decided a lot. So, it's a rhythm, for us of both going out, but also going deep. Yeah. Right. That's a really big thing for us. And we don't just wait for people to come to us. We actually take on that, body. We go to them. And usually the best disciple makers are people who have a reason to exist in those communities. So that's language that we use a lot. So missional, incarnational impulse was number 2.
Yeah. Again, just a quick reminder, DNA in our bodies is what tells us, hair color looks like this, eye color looks like this, fingerprints are this, right? DNA forms who we are, or informs who we are. Movemental DNA informs who we're going to be as God's people, and informs our networks and our organizations, what we look like, how we function. Yeah. So the third one is disciple making, or disciple making ecosystems. We try to use that language. Again, this one is probably one that feels like, isn't that always a part of the church? But how it's lived out and how it's embodied on the ground by everyday people is the shift in this mDNA.
That's good, dude.
So our language, the tagline that we wrap around this mDNA for the Kansas City Underground is, we are all disciple makers, becoming like Jesus and joining him on mission. So it's really a shift too. It's like I was having that conversation with that guy yesterday. He's like, we have a definition for a disciple. It's like, that's great. Do you have a definition for a disciple maker though? Because one is a noun and one is a verb. Mm-hmm. Like, we've done that. We've made this, I'm a disciple of Jesus. Mm-hmm. But that brings some baggage around like consuming content. But disciple maker as a verb implies something that I'm supposed to be doing.
Disciple making would be the verb, right? Maker would still be a noun.
Oh, you're right. Disciple making.
Anyway,
that doesn't happen often that you correct my grammar. Anyway,
and then east means like west.
I just meant that we are about something. We are doing something. So we're all disciple makers. Movements don't grow because people are consuming information. They multiply because we're moving out and multiplying disciple makers. And again, this is about an obedience-based disciple-making ecosystem. It's about, I'm looking at Jesus going, this is how I treat those that are hungry and thirsty. This is how I treat those that are in prison or who are oppressed. If I do this for the least of these, I do it for you. That was the passage I read this morning. So it's like, okay, I'm engaging around these practices, and then I have to live that out, not just know that passage. Mm-hmm. How do I live that passage, not just know it? And then how do I help others live that passage, not just know it? So it's relational, it's reproducible, and it's transformative.
Man, that's good. We should totally do that.
We should. Yeah.
You think Cash thinks this is a really funny episode?
Well, he only listened to the first 45 seconds. So.
I thought the 45 seconds was pretty funny because you did that tone where it's like really serious. Okay. Number 4, man, I feel like I get all the words that I have to translate.
You want me to do this one?
No, I like it.
Okay.
Liminality and communitas.
Also 2 words that are not made up, but that are real. I did the research around this.
Yeah. So liminality, have you ever heard people talk about those liminal spaces?
No.
You haven't?
Yes, I have. But many people
haven't.
Like that's not in my everyday language.
It's kind of that space in between where you're like kind of in between and you're uncomfortable and the answers aren't clear and you're like, it's when we talk about like, man, we are refined when we don't know the answers. Or it's like when in our micro church, we got a family who we've been walking with for a long time, and they're just like constantly like, man, I just wish God would show us this, because they're really seeking God answers. And I kept saying frustrating things like, oh man, but this is when you hear God. Mm-hmm. Right? It's that space, the liminal space,
the tension.
You're in that tension. and the answers aren't clear, the actions aren't clear, you don't exactly know what to do. So that's liminality. And then communitas. Communitas is one of my favorite like ideas.
Yeah.
And this is this idea where like a community, it's not community for community's sake. Communitas is community on mission, right? And so every great picture that we get of like a team, you know, like when a sports team comes together, right? Because they've got this shared task. Or we watch Band of Brothers and we think about, you know, that you see that military, what happens in war and battle, and that the bonding that happens of people that you would go to war with and die for. Like this is this idea of communitas, that we're not just going to be a community that's for ourselves. We're a community that's out there going on mission.
And there's a weight to it, a sense of family that is deeper than just, I know you. It's like, no, I know you.
Yeah. Man, I didn't mention this the other. We got some good friends who are in our world. Who he was a soldier, served for a long time in the army, I believe, and served overseas, Afghanistan. Saw a bunch of hard, crazy stuff. And we had dinner with him a few weeks ago, and they're just talking about the community and the brotherhood that was formed, and then the wife, even of the military wives that they lived nearby. And I just asked, do you miss it sometimes? And they're like we're talking about all the really hard stuff, like trauma, horrible things. So you miss it sometimes? Oh yeah, every day.
Yeah.
Like I've never experienced community like I experienced there. Right. So just that idea of like being on mission together. But what that, you know, what that means for our values, right, of liminality and communitas, is that essentially we are the church that is more than just these communities for the sake of community. Like we want to be a network of spiritual families who are on mission, who are reconciling communities that bring beauty, justice, good news to every context in our city, right? And we really believe that movements are born not in the comfortable spaces, but like in those liminal spaces, right? In the wilderness, right? The heart where we go out and we join Jesus. And liminality is that place of uncertainty, and communitas is that deep bond that forms in that place of uncertainty as people are going out there together. That's where that's where the good stuff happens, man. That real stuff happens in that space. And I just, for us personally, and I think you got some scripture you want to throw out here, but dude, it wasn't until I feel like we went all in. Like we were dabbling in this stuff for years. I'm saying me, my family, my wife, all those, we're dabbling in this. But when we went all in, well, we had no place left to go except we're going to forge ahead and join Jesus on mission. It was when we really started to see some really cool fruit in our lives.
Yeah. We failed to mention Ephesians 2-3 for the disciple making component. But I just wanted to read a few verses out of Ephesians 2, because Ephesians 2-3 informs liminality, communitas as well. Again, the Ephesians for us is the backbone of the mDNA and how we express it. So again, hear those words. We are the church, a network of spiritual families who are reconciling communities on mission to bring beauty, justice, good news. All of Cory's language of like, you're in the tension of spaces, you weren't something, you're being formed into something. And then there's this gravity and this weight to what you are formed in. And these are Paul's words in Ephesians 2, starting in verse 11. Don't forget, you Gentiles used to be outsiders. You were there. You were called uncircumcised heathens, quote, by the Jews, who were proud of their circumcision, even though it affected only their bodies, not their hearts. In those days, you were living apart from Christ. This is not a community that's happening. You were excluded from citizenship among the people of Israel. You did not know the covenant promises God made with them. You lived in this world without God, without hope. That's a desperate, lonely place. But now you have been united with Christ. Once you were far from God, now you have been brought near to him through the blood of Christ. For Christ himself has brought peace to us. He united Jews and Gentiles. So again, like this is hard work into one people. In his own body on the cross, he broke down the wall of hostility that separated us. Verse 16, together as one body, Christ reconciled both groups to God by means of his death on the cross. If you jump over to that last little section, liminality, communitas, verses 19-22. Now you Gentiles are no longer strangers and foreigners. You are citizens along with all God's holy people. Here's the rest of the metaphor, though. You are members of God's family. Like, hear the transition that happens there. together we are his house built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, and the cornerstone is Christ Jesus himself. We are carefully joined together in him, becoming a holy temple for the Lord. Though you Gentiles, or through him you Gentiles, are also being made a part of this dwelling where God lives by his Spirit. So good. Like, I've always looked at Ephesians 2 and 3 as a tagline on liminality, communitas, but like that was the first time I think that actually, like, I felt the depth of the liminality, communitas piece.
And you see it from two groups of people that didn't have a reason to be. And I feel like the whole heart of that was like, no, through Jesus, we're all being brought together. And it was not easy.
No.
And this is not easy, and this is hard, but like, man, that's good, bro. I love it.
Next one would be based in Ephesians 4, primarily, apest. And this one, I say apest. Many of you that listen to this know it. Apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, teachers. Christ gave these gifts to the church for the equipping toward maturity. The actual mDNA on this one is apostolic structures. And the language behind that is actually more about equipping and sending and decentralization, and understanding that we're not basing everything on one person, one centralized idea. We need the fivefold of APEST for the sake of catalyzing new works that can contextualize all over the place. So our tagline on this one is, we equip with 5 functions because all are called and empowered by the Spirit to overcome evil and bring life. Woo! That's some good, strong language. So movements flourish in environments that continually are releasing pioneering leaders. And it's not just about the apostolic. We don't want to lean on that as if it's a hierarchy and something more important. We actually need the fullness of the fivefold to be equipped toward maturity. But it is about cultivating an environment where risk and innovation and experimentation and adventure, boundary crossing, like all of these things are not shut down. Like, I just think of our friend that we've been walking with, not to go into her story, but she's working among a pocket of people in this city that there's a whole lot of people right now on either side that would go, I can't believe you're working with them. Right. And it's working among extremely marginalized people. And if, like, the whole story was, she went to her local church, it's an institutional form of Christianity, said, I need help. And they said, this is verbatim, we don't have time for that. That's not the soil where new things grow. That's not the heart of Jesus. And so this mDNA is about, how do we look at people like this young woman and go, how do we help you flourish in that work that is joining Jesus in that hard place? So that's what that mDNA is about, and just embracing that we want to equip and send. Over and over and over again.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about APEST, but I'm excited to talk more about it. It's present in these structures, right? It has to be, and it's flattened. It's not a hierarchy. So
that's right.
There's a lot of language around APEST in the church in the West that's hierarchical, and that's not the way that we're talking about. It's the structure, but it's the family. It's everyone has their voice and their role, and it's actually more flattened. But there are roles that, and so I'm excited to talk about that more. But let's go number 6, because we're already about 30 minutes into this. All right. So last one of our quick introduction episodes.
It's because we got excited about them.
Is organic systems, right? So we really see that through the last 3 chapters in Ephesians. We lean in Ephesians 4 through 6, and that is that, like, the reality is that we're, well, the tagline, I guess, maybe I'll read the tagline. So we are a living organism. I think it's supposed to say like organism.
Yeah.
We are a living organism, but that word's gone. That multiplies the fully alive life in and through ordinary people in every place and in every way. Right? Like, this is that on that DNA level, where every seed, right, has the potential to be a tree. You know, it's kind of that idea of like these organic systems, in that if you're really trying to control everything, you won't see movement.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy, right? So we can control what we can control. We can have strong DNA, right? And we can like have language, and we can have things that permeate through, but at some point you have to, like, my hand is releasing. It's opening up.
Yeah.
We have to release control so that movements that can grow like ecosystems, right? So what does it look like to steward that, to help it be healthy, to come alongside those things? But the structures that come with it, have to be simple.
Yep.
Like they
have to build some structure.
You do, especially in the West, I think, like, because we don't have those same social structures that are strong enough, but like you need it everywhere. Everywhere you see movement, there is some sort of structure, but it's a structure that can help things grow organically, grow wild, as what do you always say? Let the good things
let the good things grow wild.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you let the good things grow wild?
G.K. Chesterton.
In a way that's not just weeds taking over the garden, right? So it's like we use those analogies like building trellises and support systems, but in the end, man, it's got to be simple, adaptable, reproducible, right? That like just boom, send people out.
Yeah.
And so without that kind of scalability, you're not going to see, if you got a roof on it, it ain't going to grow. And so it's like, how do you scale that out? So organic systems is it's number 6, huge piece of what we do. Yeah.
So we didn't ask you questions that you could consider along the way. We did with the first one. I forgot to keep doing that. We did with the second one.
They don't know the first one exists.
Anyway,
they don't know anything about it.
We're going to get into the depth of these in the next few weeks. So why don't you got anything to wrap us up with?
Not really. I mean, just like we're going to do our best not to sit in just the heady stuff. Totally. We're going to make this practical. And let's probably try to all of our world, all of our podcast world, we try to make this stuff super practical by real conference. But this is stuff that you, as an ordinary disciple maker, if you're listening to from that posture, are living into. If you're part of this, you're living into these. How can you live into them more? What's some blind spots? But in the end, you're living into this.
Amen. All right. See y'all next week for Jesus is Lord.
Deuces.